It's the Blues Rock Show with Pete Francis and Willie Witten.
Welcome to the Blues Rock Show. I'm Pete Francis, joined by Willie Witten. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss a video. Willie, we're going to kick things off this week talking about Joe Bonamassa's new album, Time Clocks, just came out. Of course, it's probably going to hit #1 this week on the Billboard Blues chart, much like all of Joe's albums. My question to you, Willie, where do you rank Time Clocks amongst Joe Bonamassa's best work?
It's interesting because we have spoken about this and we have a bit of a disagreement here. You really love it. You love the backside of the album very much. I do love the album. The album is great. There's no debating that. It's a wonderful album. It's got great music. Joe is expanding. The writing is way better. But honestly, Pete, maybe it'll change. But right now, I think Royalty is better. And so when you talk about all time, I don't even need to go to all time. I don't think it's as good as his last one. What do you think, Pete?
Well, I liked Royalty, and obviously a lot of people liked Royalty. It was voted Blues Rock Review's #1 album of 2020. So Royalty obviously was a pretty good album. I really like Time Clocks. I gave it a 9.5 out of 10 in my review. I said it was the best Bonamassa album since The Ballad of John Henry, which in my opinion is Joe's best album ever, is The Ballad of John Henry. And I still feel that The Ballad of John Henry is his career-defining best album. If someone asked me, I want to get into Joe Bonamassa, that's the first album I would send them to.
Yeah.
I think Time Clocks, though, is really, really good, Willie. I think, as you mentioned, the writing is a step up on Time Clocks. You've got great songs, 1 through 10. I think it's a really, really solid album. Notches is the single. Obviously, that one's getting out there a lot. Really great song. Awesome guitar. The chorus is really great. As I mentioned before, tracks 6 through 8 I really like. So the name, that's Mind's Eye, is number 6. That one just has this really cool, haunting intro. And it gave me sort of the same sort of vibe you kind of get listening to Slow Gin. I wouldn't put it on the same level as Slow Gin, but it's very good. And it gave me that sort of feeling, that sort of vibe. I really like that song. Curtain Call, which is track 7. That is a very, Zeppelin sort of vibe. And that could have fit in really well on a Black Country Communion album. If those guys ever get back together and play any shows, I wouldn't be surprised if they played Curtain Call, because that would fit great with a Black Country Communion album. What do you have to say, Willie?
I guess what I'm saying is this, like, I have my fingers crossed, is like, hopefully, because I know that there were times, between Joe and the band Black Country Communion that, like, they had their bouts. But my gosh, like, for the fans, like, Pete, don't you think, like, that was one of Joe's best adventures of all time, to go into Black Country Communion? Those shows and the album that they made, I listened to that, Pete. There's not a month that goes by where I have not listened to their stuff. Why won't they go back, put their differences aside?
Well, I think it was more so Joe doing his solo thing, because his solo career was doing so well.
Right.
And I think Joe, he received a nice bump too when they started Black Country Communion, but his profile is a lot higher now than it was right when Black Country Communion began. So, but to your point, yeah, I think especially those first 2 Black Country Communion albums were really, really top notch. But the other track that I really like on this new Joe Bonamassa album, track number 8, which was The Loyal Kind, which he co-wrote with Bernie Marsden. And interestingly enough, Willie, that track was actually originally written for Royalty. They left it off that album. They put it on this one. One of my favorite tracks. I love that track.
Pete, that's sort of like, that stings me a bit in a good way. You didn't tell me that you knew that knowledge, because my thing is, I really love the Royalty album more than this one. And so when you're telling me that, hey, they saved it for this one, I'll have to go back and listen to it. It's not that I haven't listened to it. I love this album. I just don't see it as quite as good as royalty. But here's the thing, and Pete, you and I have spoken about this so many times. With Joe Bonamassa albums, they are deep. They are thoughtful. So it's going to.
And I thought this album, Willie, was perhaps his most thoughtful album from a lyrical standpoint.
Right. And so that's why we've been speaking about this, and you're very confused and why I don't love this as much. How about this, Pete? Give me a couple months to listen to this end on end, and I may come around to your idea, but I don't know. What about Eric Gales? Because Joe Bonamassa has been working with Eric Gales, right?
Yeah, so they're going to release Crown. That's on January 28th. And there's been a lot of talk about this album, Willie, and there's been a lot of buzz on social media because we knew that there was going to be a guitar duel between Joe Bonamassa and Eric Gales. And if you guys aren't familiar, there was a video that went viral on YouTube where Eric Gales and Joe Bonamassa basically had this epic guitar duel when Eric Gales joined Joe Bonamassa for a live performance of the Ballad of John Henry. And those two just like went at it, and it's kind of a mind-blowing guitar face-off.
Yeah.
So basically, now they hyped it up and they released the first single, and that's I Want My Crown. And it's a pretty cool video. Eric Gales is he's in a dream in the music video. And then basically he wants the crown, which Joe Bonamassa has. And they go into a ring for a heavyweight bout. Keb Mo is the referee. And then they have the guitar duel. So really cool, neat concept for a video. Willie, how much are you looking forward to this album? And what did you think of this guitar duel that's going to be on the album and in that music video?
I think the guitar duel is really awesome. And I think that like we as listeners will like appreciate the duel. But I think that they as musicians have something deeper. And what that is that Eric Gales is really, honestly, he's one of the best, I think, and people can disagree with me, but I think he's one of the best living musicians of all time. He is very rangy. If you listen to the stuff that he plays, he can play all sorts of different genres and it doesn't faze him. So many people are like stuck in the things that they play. Eric Gales doesn't seem to have limits. He doesn't.
Well, and this track is a perfect example of that because it's not necessarily what I was expecting, Willie. I was thinking that this was probably going to be a rockier sort of track with them kind of really hyping up this guitar duel, but it was a very funky type of track. And that really kind of caught me by surprise.
Well, I think that, and that's sort of what I was trying to say is like, he's so versatile.
Yeah.
He's someone like, there's a lot of people who are guitar players. And then there are people who are musicians. He's a musician. He can do whatever he wants. He can do whatever he wants. Sometimes I don't even know what he wants. He's just playing. He's a really good player. So yes, like the video, I thought the video was really awesome because he like, it's like the hair standing up on your arm and it's fun. But like beyond that, it's just like a little bit of like to whet the appetite for what's coming next. This is a man, Pete, we've spoken about this, who has been through a lot and he is back.
Yeah.
And he's one of the best living guitar players currently.
Yeah.
Pete, do you agree or disagree with
that? I totally agree with that. And he's a great redemption story. And he's been pretty public about some of, his battles with addiction. He went away to prison. I mean, Eric Gales has lived a very interesting life. Yes. And now this is really kind of his road to redemption and really kind of taking his crown. He's seen his peers like Joe Bonamassa rise to prominence, and Gales had kind of been left behind a little bit due to circumstances. So now I think Gales is 5 years sober. He's doing great. So now we're really kind of seeing him fulfill his potential, and more people now are getting to discover him now that he's collaborating with Joe. They're putting out his album. It's going to just give Eric this platform so more people can see his music and finally discover, wow, this guy is a phenomenal guitar player.
Pete couldn't say it any better. Speaking of, he's got this new album coming out. We were talking earlier today about vinyl.
Yeah.
Pete, vinyl. Like, you are the guy who runs the show here. You get a lot of submissions. Most of them are digital or CDs. But vinyl is coming back. Do you think it's going to stay, Pete?
It's interesting because there's a new stat that came out here in 2021 that vinyl sales are actually up 108% through the first 6 months of this year. So that's very encouraging when you look at how CD sales are just, continue to go down. And unfortunately, the CD format is just dying. It's pretty close to dead at this point. Yes, unfortunately.
Yes.
People can't get CD players in their cars anymore. And that's probably the place where people are listening to CDs the most. And with streaming, you're probably not going to be listening to CDs at home.
Right.
So, yeah, CDs continue to go down. Album sales continue to go down. And vinyl sales continue to go up. I saw a stat. I was reading an article. I think Taylor Swift's last album, she sold like over 100,000 vinyl editions.
Vinyl, not
of
CD.
The album. Yeah,
vinyl.
Which is crazy. So, and obviously vinyl has become a collector's item. People like to have the vinyl as something that they can kind of show. Case in point, right there. Okay. People love that. So that's cool. And the other good thing is it does give musicians a way to make money. And with streaming, it's really impossible unless you are a Taylor Swift to make money. So it is a way that artists can make some money. One of the issues, though, with vinyl is you're not generally able to make as much product. It is more difficult to get vinyl made.
Yes, right. There's a real material cost to it.
Mm-hmm.
Pete, like everything you've said, like I agree 100%. I think you're right. I just don't know where it ends and we've had this for all the people who actually do watch our show. We talk about this a lot. Like the streaming problem is problematic for musicians. It's very hard for them to make music. So when you say things like collector, I think that's a good thing because you know what? I want to go and get the next Shaky Graves album. I want to go, how about this? I'm not a huge Taylor Swift fan, but I'll buy the album so that when my cousin comes into town, we can listen to it. That's back to where we used to be about music. Music is important, man. Pete, right?
And one of the things we're talking about with collectibles and streaming, once we kind of get into this day and age, and we're really starting to get there already, where basically streaming is like the only platform.
Right.
I don't find myself going back to older music as much as I used to before when it was all physical product.
Exactly.
So you have to actively go and search. It's not just, this is sitting on my shelf. I'm going to listen to this. You don't have that option anymore. So I don't find myself going back and listening to things. Even it's the same thing with movies, really, too. People used to have huge movie collections and be like, okay, what are we going to watch? Well, you just go grab it off the shelf. Exactly. Everything is streaming now. So you don't really have that option either. So I'm not going back and finding older things as much as I used to. So I do like the fact that vinyl is having this big resurgence. And I think that's just going to help everybody.
I think it's going to help everyone. I talk with some of my friends to say like, hey, if you have old vinyl stuff, I'll buy it from you. And really, it's not because of the like dorky analog idea and all this stuff. It's more about like, you know what I really enjoyed was putting something down on a turntable and paying attention to this album.
Mm-hmm.
That's what music was really about. And it still is. But only
except today, it's all about singles. And now the question is why would artists even release full albums at this point? Because for most of them, there's no point in doing it because it's a losing proposition, basically.
Exactly. Well, Pete, we had a great show. We ended on a down note. Fill me in, pick me up on the high notes. Let's talk about next week because there's a ton of good music coming out soon. So you finish that out. Let's end on a high.
Well, November is a really big month, Willie. I know Dion's coming out with a new album. We've got a new Government Mule album. We've really had a ton of great music that has come out over the past month. I mean, the month of October was absolutely stacked in terms of album releases. There were so many good album releases in the month of October. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell so you never miss a video. And please hit that like button. It really does help us out a lot, and it helps more people see the videos, and that definitely helps us out. So please hit the like button. We really appreciate that. He's Willie Witten. I'm Pete Francis. This is the Blues Rock Show. We'll see you next time.